Have you heard of this thing called vibe coding? It's really a big craze now, and honestly, it's the future. So let me show you. Vibe coding is essentially a new approach to software development that leverages AI to generate code based on natural language prompts rather than traditional line by line coding. It essentially involves describing what you want to build in natural language, and the AI then translate it into executable code. Basically, it's essentially using an AI agent to tell it to code for you. And a lot of developers are doing it now. I'm not a developer, but I've been using this sort of theory to try to solve a solution for a client, and it actually works. Now, the one thing is we have to realize that this is actually not new. It's just evolved. Back in the day when we had to create websites, if you remember, we'd essentially open and close HTML brackets. Over time, people realized that a lot of this opening and closing HTML brackets from scratch is very trivial. So in fact, it's mundane, right? These are things that always need to be done, and every time you do it, it's essentially the same. So what happened over the years is that we created content management systems such as WordPress, Squarespace, even Shopify, which is the e-commerce version now. And that's essentially a kind of vibe coding in a way, but we're using templates, right? And we're not doing things from scratch. So what we're doing nowadays with AI is that we're asking it to code something for us, essentially giving us a whole template, a foundation of, help me get started without me having to do line by line code. That's basically it. At the end of the day, they give you a little bit more. But I was recently given a real life example, and a client came to me with a real business challenge. He said, all of my customers text me directly, and that's fine for now, but I want to grow. I want to be able to scale. I need a way to scale communication without every client knowing who's responding. So basically, he wants to be able to respond to his client without the client knowing that it's not him responding. So basically, he wants to hire a couple of employees, and if a client reaches out to him through one phone number, he wants to be able to text that client back to give the client the answer that they need, the service that they're requesting, without it having to always be him. And some of the constraints are the client only wants to text, no downloading a WhatsApp, Slack, or any new apps. He wants to keep using one number only, no personal numbers, no confusion. Hey, here's a new client, please text this number and you'll get a response. He also wants the client to be able to call that number, and it will ring on everyone's cell phone all at the same time. On top of that, he wants to be able to call or use that phone number to call out, so that when the client receives the phone call, they can see that it's coming from him, from that one number. And most importantly, if an employee leaves, the system needs to stay intact. So there's no reassigning number, right? We're not looking for a way where if he has a new client, he assigns an account manager, the account manager gets a brand new phone number, doesn't want the client to install any apps. And what I've essentially done is I took the theory of vibe coding and I worked with ChatGPT. And so in ChatGPT, you can do what's called a deep research. What you basically do is you tell ChatGPT what you're looking for, and ask it to provide you some deep research based on all your constraints and assumptions. It's essentially business requirements gathering, right? And within a matter of minutes, it will generate you options. So when I used ChatGPT, it gave me a couple of options. Solution one is a combination of Twilio and Slack integration. At this point, I've only used Slack in my professional career or even personal. I've never used Twilio. I don't even know what it is. So this allowed me to discover different companies that offer services that I'm looking for without me having to go to google.com and just going through the pages and pages of research, reading articles and people paying sponsored ads and things like that. ChatGPT did all that research for me, provided me multiple solutions. So you can see here, solution 2 is using Twilio and Front, which is a shared SMS inbox for Teams. And also solution 3 is using a dedicated business texting platform such as Haymarket, Textline, Avocado. And I went into the rabbit hole. So here's an example. I asked ChatGPT what my requirements are, and it was able to produce me a very, very long pros and cons, multiple solutions, and it gave me links to documentations. And ultimately, I just decided to go with it, right? And it also gave me a comparison of the solutions. What the pros and cons, the costs, things like that. And I went to work. I literally asked ChatGPT how to do this, and it gave me step-by-step instructions on setting up the account, what kind of code to put into the system, and I followed it line by line, literally. Now, the problem is that it didn't work, right? And I found an application that was able to support the different people texting and the clients looking at the phone thinking that it's coming from the same number. But that application doesn't allow you to call in and out. And so I needed to figure out how to do that. And what I've done is I just simply asked ChatGPT. ChatGPT then provided me all these other options, and it gave me some code to work with. And I used the code to put into Twilio. And I was able to find a soft phone that it recommended. I did all the configurations and it worked. I was able to receive incoming calls. If someone called that number that I purchased from Twilio, I was able to receive that incoming call on this soft phone app, and we're able to download the app for everyone so that everyone's phone ring at the same time. Now, what I couldn't do, and this is a limitation of ChatGPT, is that it couldn't figure out how to let me call out. And after a couple of days, hours, and normally this kind of stuff would take weeks, I reached out to support. Support led me to this document. And they basically said, just follow this documentation and you'll be able to figure out what needs to be done. And it is really in this section here that teaches us how to modify the code, modify some of these SIP subdomains, these bins, etc. And I followed it exactly, but it didn't work again. Turns out the documentation had a bunch of dependencies and packages that it's calling and is completely out of date. So eventually I figured that out, right? I figured it out by there's an option in the system that allows you to, I guess like click like allow the system to automatically create a hello world, response. If someone were to call in the phone number, and I noticed that the versions were out of date, so I simply just updated the version. And when I did that, I was able to deploy. This is the example of the JavaScript that this documentation provided. This JavaScript is supposed to be able to allow you to have incoming and outgoing calls. And what I simply done was I followed the documentation. I created this function, which I don't know how to do because I'm not a developer. And so I'm literally copy and pasting this function into Twilio to try to make the inbound and outbound call work. And it didn't work, right? But Twilio has an area where you can see a bunch of the logging, right? And so what I simply did was I took the logging of, hey, this is an error, what's the error? And I just fed it to ChatGPT. I said, hey, here's the code. I simply pasted the whole code that was provided in the FAQ documentation. And I then try to deploy it. It gets deployed because I fixed the versioning. And then in Twilio, it provided me with all these logs saying, hey, this is not working because XYZ. And I simply copy and pasted that bug into ChatGPT. And then it then started debugging for me, providing me, hey, actually, thank you for the issue. Now that we know what the issue is, here's how to fix it. And I repeated that process over and over and over again until I got something to work. And so the moral of the story is that the tools that are available nowadays is so powerful that we can't dismiss it and say, hey, this is gonna kill all the artists and all the jobs and things like that. We have to embrace it, and we have to utilize it so that it makes our job easier, and it allows us humans to do a lot more. And so I'm not a developer, but I was able to make a working product through what is now called vibe coding. And it's essentially being able to understand and ask the right questions to ChatGPT, prompt it correctly, providing it the information that it needs, and eventually it's going to understand what you want to do, how you want to do it, and be able to produce the code that you need to get the things, to get something working. So, needless to say, this was an amazing experience, and I hope this will influence you to continue to look into these things and adapt to the new technologies that are coming out. Because if you don't, you're just going to be left behind. Well, I hope this helps, and So until next time, let me know what you think. Cheers.